Welcome to MyLITV. From Manhasset to Montauk, Long Island is full of fantastic people. We have traveled into many of our great communities to bring you the following stories. I'm your host, Waldo Cabrera. Get ready, MyLITV starts now.
We protect the water quality and habitat of the whole Peconic Estuary, which starts here and goes out between the North and South Forks of Long Island, and part of that is controlling invasive species. Peconic River has actually a few invasive aquatic plants, but one that's particularly invasive is Ludwigia, which is a water primrose, and it sort of overtakes the lake and the river and doesn't allow for boating or fish habitat. So we have a bunch of folks here today, a lot of volunteers to help remove it. Invasive means that it takes over native habitat. So it's a non-native plant, and it's an aquarium species that's sold in pet stores for your aquarium, but people have released it into the river. So it takes over the habitat of all the natural and native plants that live here. So it forces them out, and it doesn't provide quality habitat for native fish species.
About 2003, we started getting reports of a new plant that fishermen were seeing here on this lake that was spreading pretty rapidly, and they were a little concerned about it. So we came out and took some samples and got it identified it as Ludwigia peploides, or water primrose willow. It grows on the surface and it kind of spreads out across the surface of the water and makes this big floating mat that you can't get a boat or a fishing line or anything through. And it can actually, it's been known to spread all the way across the top of a lake, and then you can't use the lake. So that's the issue. You know, it does really spread out in an area where it shades out the vegetation down in the water and prevents the sunlight from getting into the water. It's a perennial, so it kind of expands on its previous year's growth every year. And so if we don't knock it back, it's going to get bigger every year. With this maintenance pull every year, we can kind of stay ahead of it. The first year, I think we pulled close to 40 cubic yards. The next year, we pulled about 60 cubic yards. We had another year of big pulls, and since then, we've only been pulling 5 or 10 cubic yards a year, which is relatively manageable. We can do it with 1 or 2 relatively small pulls. Initially, we were filling john boats and bringing them back and pitchforking it into a dumpster. Now we can do it mostly with canoes and kayaks and just a couple of john boats. We tried a couple of different things. The problem is that it's really heavy. So a fishing net, you'd get more than you could pick up. With your hands, you can just get an amount that you can pick up, and then you get another amount you can pick up, and that works fairly well. It's spread down the river, so we have folks that are going to go all the way down the river and pull it on the way down, but the infestation started here in Peconic Lake, and we still have the biggest infestation here. So we'll spend a lot of time pulling here, but we'll also have people going downstream.
An estuary, by definition, is where the freshwater and saltwater come together. And the Peconic Estuary program, we define our area of interest as the Peconic Estuary, as well as all of the watershed contributing freshwater to it, so that includes the whole Peconic River. A very common way for invasive plants to travel, especially between lakes and rivers, is on boats. So if you take your boat or your kayak someplace else, paddle around, you get a little bits of weeds on it, and then you bring it someplace else and put it in the water without cleaning it carefully, you can wind up transferring native but also invasive weeds to the new water bodies. Sometimes there are certain weeds, particularly lake weeds, that get transported with fish, like aquarium fish. People will have these little plants in their aquariums, and they'll think, oh, we'll just dump it out into the river or into the lake.
There's no way we're going to be able to get it all. Because even as you're pulling, you're going to lose a little piece that you're not going to see, and it's going to anchor itself again or spread to someplace else, and it'll grow. That's why we have to do this every year. Unless something comes along and starts to eat it, it's here forever.
So this weed is sort of unique in that if you break it up, that actually will cause it to spread more. That's kind of how it reproduces and how it spreads. So that's why we're doing this with canoes and kayaks and volunteers. Pulling it out by hand is really the best and almost the only way to get it out, because you have to be very gentle. not break it up, and if you do break it up, you have to collect all the bits that you break up. So we're going to go out and find it, pull it by hand, collect it in our boats, and bring it back to shore so we can dispose of it in a landfill so it doesn't wind up right back into the river.
The Peconic Paddler is a significant business in downtown Riverhead. It would severely impact that business and other local businesses. If you maintain the environment in good shape, it really benefits everybody, even if they don't directly use the water body.